So now we're going to talk about health and safety and some of the other things that are related to that, such as child protection, some of your legal responsibilities, your risk assessment method of work statements, as well as insurance and some of the actual health and safety checks you have to do. So in summary, we're going to look at risk assessments and method of work statements. We're going to identify some domestic risks and also cover child protection. It's not strictly health and safety, but it is relevant to what you're doing. We're going to look at some commercial risks, look at insurance and specific health and safety checks. So everything we do at work is governed by the Health and Safety at Work Act, etc. 1974. So you need to do risk assessments of anything that you may suspect there might be a risk or hazard which could cause harm to you or anybody else. And once something's happened, you need to do this for what has happened and caused harm or maybe a hazard to people. And for each risk, you really need a method of work statement which shows how each job will be performed to ensure any action identified in the risk assessments are adhered to, so those risks don't actually manifest themselves. These documents together, the risk assessment and the method of work statement, are loosely referred to as your RAMs, and you can see there which letters have been picked out to come up with that abbreviation. So why do you need RAMs? Domestic and commercial jobs, you should have done them to comply with the law for every single job you do. And you also ought to carry a printed copy with you at all times to prove that, because if you haven't got it with you, you are technically working illegally. On commercial jobs, many shopping centres, office blocks, factories, shops, etc., you have to sign in. And if you sign in and say you're going to do some work, they might not allow you onto the premises if you haven't completed your RAMs or got copies to show them. So, it could actually waste your day. So it's worthwhile having them with you. We've drafted PDFs of the things we're going to discuss here. So you've got a copy of RAMs that you can download from our website after you've successfully passed the course. So we're going to go through those in a minute. It's not an exhaustive list because these are only things we've encountered. If you have any accidents or think of anything else which is relevant, you need to perform your own risk assessment and, if necessary, modify your RAMs and write a method of work statement to get around them. So the domestic risks we've identified and included here are, firstly, children and pets in a domestic environment. They will knock things over. That's what they do. Either children or you could get concussion, cuts and bruises, and furniture pieces could also be damaged or broken. So really, you should not allow them in your work environment. If a customer is awkward, point out the results and advise them it is in their interest to do so. If any damage is caused or injury, it's not your fault if they refuse to keep their children and pets away from you. It's their fault. I'm just going to touch on child protection here, lone children. Sometimes you can go around to a house and the parent's gone out and left their son or daughter in to answer the door, and they think their child is responsible, but they're under 16 and you're an adult. So if a parent is not present but leaves their child to let you in and out so you can work, if you're on your own, you could be accused of something untoward. You've really got to refuse to do the job. You can't work in an environment like that these days. On the same subject with child protection, small children very often want to watch you work. It's not like working as a builder or a plasterer or a plumber where it's dirty. Very often when you're building flatpack furniture in a nice clean environment and children are keen to see you build something, especially if it's a bed for them or a chest of drawers that's going in their room. Now parents are quite pleased often to leave their children with you to watch you work whilst they go off doing other bits of housework in the house. Now the same thing applies. You could be accused of doing something untoward if you have to say something to the children to stop them hurting themselves or get out of your way. So you really, if a parent does this, you need to explain as part of child protection, you don't want to put yourself in a position of being accused of something. At the end of the day, the parent doesn't know you. So if the child wants to watch, the parent really needs to sit next to them and watch with the child whilst you're building it. But don't work on your own with a child that you don't know, because you're putting yourself in an awkward position, potentially. Now, you need sufficient space to work. If you're working in a tight area, you're more likely to knock things over, and this could result in damage to furniture pieces or cuts and bruises to yourself. So you need to clear an area to work, so you have approximately 1 foot or 30 centimetres around an item of furniture if it were lying flat on the ground. The majority of wardrobes are the biggest items you're going to build, and typically these will be built lying face down. In some cases, it's not always the case, but you need to use your own intelligence here and identify where your tools can be placed for easy access. So you need sufficient space to work. I must admit I find this quite amusing really, because I put on my website in 2005 or 2004 that you needed 30 centimetres around each item to work, and lo and behold it now appears on virtually every single Flatpack assembler's website in the UK. Well, you know where it came from now, it was my idea. Windows and curtains. These can be particularly dangerous. I was working once building some Pax wardrobes, and I leant the frames vertically against the wall, and a gust of wind came in, it blew a curtain, the curtain caught the panel lifted against the wall and started falling. I was working on my hands and knees on the floor, and for some reason I looked up and I saw the panel about a foot or so away from my head. I dropped my tools and put my hands up as quickly as I could, and I managed to break some of the fall of the panel, but the panel still struck me on the head with sufficient force to daze me. It was about 15 or 20 minutes before I could actually start work again. I thought I'd left the panels in a safe place, but it was the curtains got underneath them when they were blown with the wind. So there is a risk that gusts of winds can blow panels resting on walls over, or blow curtains onto those panels and knock them over. And damages can occur to those pieces. You could be cut or bruises, or as it happened to me, you can get dazed, possibly concussion. I don't know if I suffered from concussion, but it was very sobering to experience something like this, just how simple things can be dangerous, simple situations. So curtains can be hazardous. If the window must be open for ventilation, tie up the curtains if necessary. Never rest panels on them or near open windows where the curtains could flap into them and cause them to fall. Hot drinks get knocked over, so you could get scalded. Also carpets, furniture, panels, etc. could all be damaged by the contents of the cup. Always leave drinks away from your area, such as a windowsill or existing pieces of furniture away from where you're working. That way you can't knock them over and you can't scald yourself. Knives and sharp tools. Again, sharp edges can cut. Serious cuts, blood on carpets, etc. can be the result. So always use the safety features on tools such as a blade cover where applicable, and keep such tools away from where you might tread or place your hands for support. When you're building flat pack furniture, you're going to be on your hands and knees a lot. So just the fact you've got shoes on isn't going to protect you if you put a knife down somewhere. You could easily put your hand on it or your knee. So always try and put blades away, or put a sharp blade back in your toolbox so you can't cut yourself on it. Heavy lifting, you could damage your back obviously as a result of lifting something that's too heavy, and which would result in preventing you from working in future or limit what work you could do in future. So really you need to complete a manual lifting course if you haven't, so you know how to lift heavy things and how not to lift things, and apply what you learn, i.e. straight back, lift with legs, etc. And set a limit of say 20 kilograms above you, which you will not lift anything on your own. I say 20 kilograms because that's what's recommended by the health and safety executive. Obviously, you know, if you're doing it on a daily basis and a regular basis, you can lift more than this, but you know, you have to set a limit somewhere and work to that, whatever you're comfortable with. Most flat pack boxes are heavier than this, and if the box is too heavy, there's nothing to stop you unpacking the box and moving one panel at a time to where you're going to assemble the item. Just use your common sense. Step ladders, you'll need these for attaching lights to the tops of wardrobe, attaching wardrobe to the walls and so forth in situations you can't risk. So obviously you could fall and you could sustain a wide variety of injuries if you fall off a step ladder. So the most important thing to know is all step ladders must be inspected before they are put to use to ensure that they're in safe working condition, and when not in use they must be rendered unusable. So use them appropriately. Heavy items, again, carrying heavy items can result in a risk of falling, tripping or dropping them. This could result in personal injury as well as damage to the product. So it's not just about manual lifting and going on a manual lifting course. It's in your interest to always ask for boxes to be where you need to assemble them before you arrive. And if you have to move them, consider unpacking them and moving them panel by panel to limit the weight you are lifting, so you're not risking an injury to yourself or the product itself. If you're dismantling or moving a tall item, people often put things like bags or shelves that haven't been used in a wardrobe on top so they're out of sight. Now, if you're doing this, a heavy item could fall on you at some point whilst you're working. I was dismantling a Roush sliding door wardrobe, and I took the only a metre wide this panel off the top, and it was ridiculously heavy, and I couldn't understand why it was so heavy. And as I buckled under the weight of holding it for as far above my head as I could reach to actually lift the panel off, I found out there were 2 shelves on top of it. It was far more weight than I was expecting, and I was lucky they didn't fall on top of me and hurt me or smash and damage other pieces of furniture or anybody else in the room. So always check the top of a tall item for anything stored on top of it before you move it or start disassembling it. You won't always be able to see it, especially if there's a cornice around the top of the wardrobe or chest or bookcase. Now let's talk about some of the commercial risks you might come into contact with. Obviously, most of the things I've spoken about there in a domestic environment will apply in a commercial environment as well. So you need to consider those. The main thing in a commercial area is your work area. Third parties, whether the customer's in a shop or office staff, will try and walk through where you're working and knock things over. And either them or you could get concussion, cuts and bruises, and furniture pieces could be damaged or broken as a result. So do not allow them into your work environment. Clear an area where you're going to work and fence it off with chains, cones, or just put furniture in the way so people can't walk through without actually making a conscious decision to do so. Just cordon off the area where you're working so this doesn't happen. You might also need to wear personal protective equipment in some environments to protect yourself. You could be at risk from hazards, say being hit by a forklift truck or other things. Many warehouse stores these days, you're in and out of the warehouse, and in the warehouse there are forklift trucks, so you have to wear a high-vis jacket. It's advisable to have your own. You know, they only cost £5 or thereabouts to buy. And when you are booking the job in, if you suspect it might be in an environment where PPE is required, such as on a building site or in a warehouse, just make sure you know and try and find out before you arrive what you need to bring. Heavy items in a commercial environment, it's the same as we discussed for domestic environments really. But very often you find there are trolleys available to move things around in commercial premises, so use them. Construction sites and CSCS cards. You can only get a CSCS card if you're qualified to perform the task you've done, you're proposing to do, and you've passed a health and safety course. So if there is a hint that a job will be on a building site, you need to ask some pertinent questions before you arrive, or else you're not going to be allowed onto the site. Find out who the site manager is, ask for the contact details, either a mobile number or an email address. And then you need to ask the simple question, what PPE is required? Are you going to check the RAMs that I've got? Are you going to check my insurance when I arrive? And make sure you bring with you what they're going to check. Do they have a safety briefing before you're allowed on site? Is it at the start of the day and they only do one? Or is it when anybody arrives they're prepared to do a safety briefing? This is also important. There's no point booking a job in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon if the safety briefing is at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're not going to be allowed to work until you've done it. And this does happen on building sites. Again, you know, what's the minimum level of insurance as well? This can be specified as well. So you need to find out exactly what you need to bring with you if you're going to be working on a construction site. So if anybody says it's a new build or they're working for a developer or anything like that, find out whether the site has been completed yet and whether there is a site manager, and get in contact with him, because the person who's asking you to do the work might not necessarily know these things. Now, specific health and safety requirements which apply to virtually everybody really. The first aid kit, power tools and other electrical equipment, and reporting of injuries under RIDDOR. So first aid kit. Under the current health and safety regulations, a first aid kit containing the following items, see on the next slide, should be on site at all times. In a domestic environment, you will need to carry your own. These items are to be kept in a standard green and white first aid box and are a minimum requirement for between 1 and 5 people in a low hazard environment, which most domestic environments will be. Your first aid kit needs to have the following contents: 20 sterile adhesive dressings or plasters, number 3 extra large dressing, and number 9 large dressing, number 8 2 8 medium dressings, 2 triangular bandages, 6 alcohol-free cleansing wipes, 6 safety pins, 1 guidance sheet, explain how to use all these things, and 2 sterile eye washes. Now you can buy a suitable kit online for £10 or £15. I've even seen them as cheap as £5. So there's no excuse for not having one of these with you. With Flatpack assembly, very few power tools are required. You need little more than a drill driver or a drill to attach things to the wall and an electric screwdriver to speed up the assembly. All equipment that's over 12 months old must be tested and labelled and logged. It's called pat testing, this is generally. But if you're using a single drill driver for all your work, it'll probably run out within 12 months. Either the batteries will die or the clutch will go and you'll need to buy a new one. So you can actually get away with not having your equipment pat tested if you're always buying new and the only thing you've got that's electrical is your drill driver. Now, before using any equipment, it should be checked for defective cables, plugs, sockets, damage to casings, etc., transformers when used, and any operation of any trip devices. Additionally, for anything that's connected to the mains, any extension cables, battery chargers, etc., must be connected through a residual current device, an RCD. Again, you can buy these online for about £10. They're not expensive. I doubt you'll be using 110 volt tools, but these must be connected through a transformer which is connected to an RCD in this case. All equipment should be in a safe and working order and should be checked to ensure it is suitable for the supply voltage to be used and that any guard is positioned and fixed. Now, there aren't any guards for a drill driver. This is more to do with electric saws and other power tools, but not particularly what you're using. Under RIDDOR, the reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences regulations. The main purpose of the regulations is to provide enforcing authorities with information on specific injuries, diseases or dangerous occurrences arising from work activities covered by the Health and Safety at Work Act. Contact your local council for further information regarding who to report these incidents to and what information they require. You must notify the enforcing authority, usually the local council, without delay, normally by a phone call, with the following information: any fatal injuries to employees or other people in an accident connected to your business, any major injuries to employees or other people in an accident connected to your business, any of the dangerous occurrences listed in the regulations. I would refer you to those regulations to check. You must also send in a written report to the enforcing authority within 7 days of a notifiable incident. These really are only dangerous things that could result in serious injury or death for the 3 points above, and also of any other injury to an employee which may result in their absence from work or being unable to do their normal job for more than 3 days, including days which you would not be working. Any cases of ill health listed in the regulations. You should hold copies of the following documents and have available for inspection Form F2508, which should be used for your reporting of dangerous injuries and dangerous occurrences, and F28A, which should be used for cases of diseases. Now, insurance. Despite your best efforts, accidents will happen, and it's stupid to work if you're not insured. You'll need personal accident insurance in case you yourself get hurt, public liability insurance if you hurt anybody else through the course of your working activities, and employer's liability insurance if you employ anyone. With policies ranging from between £5 to £25 per month, there really is no excuse for not having one. They're cheap and affordable, and companies like Direct Line allow you to pay for them by direct debit on a monthly basis. So do many brokers. So to put this into context, how much this is actually going to set you back and whether it is expensive, it's as much about your own safety as applying with the law. As I say, it's not expensive to do. A high-vis jacket, £5. A first aid kit, £10 to £15. A new drill driver every 12 months, £100. RCD, £10. Insurance, £60 to £300 a year. In total, you're looking at somewhere between £185 and £435 a year. And if you split that to a monthly figure, it's between £15 and £35 a month, which is an hour's work, maybe 2 hours work. It's not a massive amount and for you to pay to make sure that you're safe. And it really is important you do so. So in summary, these things are required for all the work you do. You may be refused entry to commercial premises without them. You need to read and understand the risks. And if you complete our tests on this course, we will post you a printed copy of our RAMs so you can have them should you ever need them. And read them when you get them so you're fully aware of the risks you're being exposed to, and make sure you buy all those other pieces of kit and use them as you should.